call there first, please.
Absolutely. Mr. Nielsen,
Here.
Mr. Rader,
Here.
Dr. Ramos, Dr. Ramos,
She might be muted.
Present.
There she goes.
Mrs. Sashanek.
Here.
Thank you.
Miss Reyes.
Here.
Thank you all. Let's go ahead now and take the opportunity to pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the
The
flag
flag of the
United
United States of America
and to
and to the republic for which
which
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
for all.
Thank you so very much. We're going to just take the time now to silence cell phones, and we'll take just a minute or two, a minute here, a moment of silence. All right, thank you very much. Ada, I guess just because this is a public meeting, has there been any call to the public that has responded back to wanting to attend or be with us tonight?
Yes, Mr. Nielsen, there is a call to the public. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
This is a call to the public from Joanne Villanos. She is a teacher at Fine Arts Academy and she is representing herself. And I'm going to go ahead and start the timer for 3 minutes. Good evening. This is Joanne Villanos, a teacher from Fine Arts Academy. Last week, I emailed the board after the special session board meeting with my thoughts about our COVID situation. I would like to thank Member Sashanek for responding to the communication. As you know, a lot has changed in our lives in 1 week period of time. It is quite astounding, confusing, and overwhelming. Nothing that I have to explain to you. Of course, many of my thoughts from last week are now irrelevant to today's situation, but there are a few things that I would like to reiterate for those listening this evening. Many people use the term uncertain when describing this pandemic and all of its ramifications. I, for one, have been sucked into this vision of worldwide and I just want it all to stop. I have to remind myself that yes, there are and will be many uncertainties in our lives, but I need to focus on what is certain in order to move forward, a term mentioned in Governor Ducey's address. Here is what I think we should focus on because they are the certainties in our lives. Number one, parents and community. Please know that we, the district, would love to be in front of our students if it were safe. We miss them dearly and can't wait to see them face to face again. But we need to be safe in our actions. I am certain that all district employees are putting in 100% of their effort to make this all work for our kids. Number two, whatever plans are decided on tonight, it is certain that we will need to reevaluate and maybe change them. This will be confusing to students, families, staff, etc., but we have to learn to accept it and adapt, something that I am personally trying to work on. We will certainly need to hold each other up during these adjustment periods and really help each other through. Number three, we will need a plan of action for mental health support for students, families, and staff. I feel this will be such a vital component of any plan. We can't provide an education without taking care of basic needs for all parties. As Charlie Blanton reminded us yesterday, Maslow over Bloom. Number four, I'm certain that our curriculum pacing guides will need to be modified, and that's okay. Parents and community, please know that we will teach as much as we can during a given time period. You will see creative and new ways of learning, and all of that's okay. Another reality that I am personally trying to accept. Number five, last and most important, this certainty was mentioned in my communication last week, but I feel it is so important to reference again. In order for any plan to be successful, The staff must be given time and opportunity to work out the details. And it has been 3 minutes.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate her thoughtfulness and hope that we can address most of those as we review tonight and as we go into the future. You've got those there and available so we can reference those again in the future. I hope. Anything else I need to do with that particular aspect of it?
No, Mr. Nielsen.
Okay. Item number 6 then is the consent agenda. Are there any other members of the board that would like to pull any of those items on the consent agenda?
This is Perletta. I would like to pull item 6A2 related to the BEDA notification of board meetings policy change.
And would it be possible to bring up, thank you.
Which number were you talking about? I didn't quite hear you.
6A2? No. A. Above.
6A2.
Right there.
Notification of board meetings.
Yep. Just for a correction, that's all, to the, there's probably a typographical issue for 2 of the words, extenuating and technological.
Can we go ahead and approve the remainder of that with that exception and come back and address that one once we approve the other ones?
Sure.
Can I have a motion then to accept those items of the consent except for item 6A2?
This is Amy, and I move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 6A2.
Thank
This
you,
is
Amy.
Kathy. I second that.
Thank you, Kathy. All of those in favor? Ada, would you like to go over the roll there quickly?
Absolutely. Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sashanek.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, if you could pull up there, that's 6A2, please, so we can look at that and review it.
See on the public notice portion, where is it? The word technological and actually extenuating, it's not in highlighted, but extenuating is not spelled correctly, and neither is technological. Those are the only 2 items I had on that. It wasn't substance, just grammatical.
So technological means is not spelled correctly.
Right.
And the other one again,
And-
please.
Extenuating, I'm assuming that it's supposed to be extenuating circumstances. If due to an emergency or extenuating circumstances.
Oh, right there.
Yeah. That's a good catch. Look at your eagle eyes.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Ada, can you make sure those corrections get in there?
Yes, I will make sure, Mr. Nielsen.
Okay, with those 2 corrections on spelling, can we then have a motion to accept item 6A2?
This is Amy, and I move that we accept item 6A2 with corrections.
Thank you.
A lot
Amy.
of sec-
All of those in favor?
Aye.
Right?
Aye.
That's it. Any opposed? Maybe that's the way, or do you need to go through it and get an aye from each one of us?
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sashanek.
Aye.
All right, now into item 7, the meat of the meeting for this evening.
I'm sorry, Curtis, who was the second on that motion?
Dr. Ramos.
It was garbled, Ada, and I did not get the who did the second.
Carletta Ramos, I'm
All right,
sorry.
thanks, got it.
Sorry about that, thanks. Okay, can we look at item number 7 here tonight? Ms. Benwater, you want to go over that item 7A?
Yes, thank you. President Nielsen, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman, executive team and community. This evening, as requested, we are providing the board with information on the new approach to the instructional delivery models and the instructional day for the opening of schools 2021, based upon the parent and teacher survey results for the school-based priority model as opposed to the model options, along with providing updated information after hearing from Governor Ducey and his emergency executive orders shared June 29th. The information shared will include school-based priority model selection data from the parents and staff, and then a description of what each of the models would look like in a typical school day, and all 3 models within the same building. We would like to begin by sharing the parent and teacher survey data provided on the school-based priority model with the 3 model options: A, full-time in-person learning, B, flexible distance learning, and C, full-time digital learning. First, Ms. Chizzy will share the survey data.
Mr. President, Governing Board, as requested, we developed another survey and solicited responses from our families regarding the type of model they most preferred to have their children participate in upon reopening of the new school year. We continue to call, email, text message, and use social media. In addition to regular modes of communication, this week included thanking those who did respond and asking all to tell their friends and neighbors about this latest effort in attempt to get our numbers up. We tried to reinforce that Littleton values collaboration, and now more than ever, it is important that we have parents as partners. Distance learning is part of our reality, and the communication between home and school is and will continue to be key to the success for our students. Now, typically, we have over 6,000 students who act as little couriers, right? Now that we don't have our students traveling between the classrooms and home, it's a great time to remind all to make sure the schools have current contact information on file with each office. We must all help spread the word that if our families are not being bombarded with phone calls, text messages, and emails, then we don't have the correct contact information. I received a lot of feedback this week. Yes, I heard you, you told me. So thank you to those of you who are responding. If you're not getting weekly information, please contact your school office to update information and continue to check our website and social media, because we triangulate in the communication department. We put all the information several places. So this past week, we did see a slight increase in participation, although again, not what we'd hoped for, but an improvement nonetheless. This slide shows you we received a response regarding placement for, I wanted to tell you before I started that we received responses regarding placement for just over 40% of our students, 47% of our students, as compared to the 40% that I reported to you last week. So we came up about 7%. This graph will show you that all sites were represented. We heard from parents from all of our schools, and we also heard from parents in all of our grades. We asked a question this time, trying to get at if it was important for our families to stay in the school they're currently assigned to, or if they'd be willing to change schools to get their models. And there was a very similar question on the staff survey. And these graphs indicated a desire for both our families and our teachers to stay at their schools. So this prompted us to shift our thinking as we began to explore if we could bring multiple models to different campuses instead of moving students to different schools to get the models they wanted. And we're calling this the school priority plan that you're going to hear about tonight. You'll hear more about the school-based dynamic distance learning from Ms. Vandewater later in this presentation, but it has been a very busy week, as you can imagine, testing models. So I'm going to go on to the next slide and show you the staff preference by model. So this shows the preferred model from the percentage of staff who responded. What we learned from this is that it is possible that the staff could be paired up with the multiple models within a building. The blue represents the teachers who selected who selected teaching in Model A, the orange in Model B, and the gray in option C, in Model C. So we started to conceptually then work on this some more and dig a little deeper. Now, our community feedback, you can see, we also received responses by grade level, and all grade levels were accounted for as well. Kindergarten looks a little bit smaller, but that makes sense to us right now proportionally because it's currently our smallest grade level. So we did have all schools responding and all grades responding. Now, here's the community responses by campus. I'll give you a second to look at that. This shows you by school, again, color-coded the exact same way, which models the people who responded were requesting. Similar to the last survey across the district, all three models were requested, and in many cases, pretty similarly. Here you can see the breakout by campus. The way you read this particular map is as follows. Take a look at the first bar right here. I have the advantage because I have the clicker. This is from Collier. 47% of the parents requested for their children. Parents requested that 40% of the children participate in Model A, or the 5-day model. 24 want Model B, the hybrid, and 29 were looking for Model C, which is the distance learning. Now, trend kind of continues. Take a look at fine arts, almost identical. 33, 34, 33. And the colors show you pretty much at a glance that, you know, things were pretty evenly requested again. So then we took a look at model class counts by campus. I am so sorry, I'm a little bit out of order here. I am so sorry, this one was just inserted. So this next graph is showing which models.
You want me to jump in?
Jump in, please.
Yeah. So the slide before, where you saw the requests from families showed 47% in Model A. So when we look at the staffing, classroom staffing, the slide we were just on, 47% of the homerooms would equal 16 classrooms. So that's the next slide. The two slides correspond to each other. So when we take the staffing at Collier, which is 34 homerooms, 47% of those would be 16. The other percentage, if I look at my notes real quick, the other percentage was 24, and that would be 8 classrooms. And the last percentage, I think, was 30 something, and that would be 10 classrooms. So by using the responses of the community for the model they preferred, we can estimate the number of teachers at each school we would need to be able to deliver each of the modules. So the the greatest number of teachers in Model A would be at Country Place, and the fewest number of teachers in Model C would also be at Country Place. And that is in proportion to community requests. But for instance, Astoria Vista had the highest percentage of parents responding, and Country Place had one of the lower percentage of parents responding. So principals still have to do the work of placing the students who we don't currently have a response from into the class rosters of one of those teachers. And I think Ms. Chizzy has an example of what that might look like in the next slide.
Okay, so right here, this would show, we did a simulation, we dig deeper to see, because it was lining up well where the community was asking for things and the staff was having a preferred model. So we just took one of the schools and we started placing teachers. And in this sample, you'll see that 2 of the kindergarten teachers would be teaching in Model A, and 1 would be teaching in Model B, and 1 in Model C, and so on. And this followed the survey results. And then we went and actually took some teacher names in some homerooms and we placed them. And we were almost able to do it exactly. There's a slight variations, but principals could work with staff to figure this out as we moved along, if this is the option that we're going, if we're going to move forward with. So this is a sample school to illustrate how it could work, right? We would, as we placed, we also thought about, even though we're looking to open schools with all students in Model C, which is a distance learning model, we would strategically build the classes, knowing which rooms would eventually be able to move to Model A or B. So as soon as it's safe to do so. So as we build them, the kids would be with the teacher, even as we were able to transition and things got safer. So it's our intent to minimize the disruption to the teacher and allow them to build those relationships and routines and continue on, even as they moved back and forth between models, whether it was Model A, B, or C. So I'm going to turn the presentation back to Ms. Vanderwater to go over some additional details for the FY 2021 school-based dynamic distance instructional model for discussion tonight. Ms. Vanderwater?
Thank you, Ms. Chizzy. I'd like to remind the community and share information on each one of the instructional delivery models and the instructional day for each proposed model, and then illustrate what the 3 models would look like within one school. Once the executive order gets lifted, we will be able to transition students to the school model choice request and adjust to the health and safety needs of the students and staff at that transitional return time. Due to the executive order, we will begin the school year on July 29th using only one model, distance learning, and all 3 models would become available at all 7 sites depending upon the health and safety of our community at that time. First and foremost, Littleton Elementary School District's planning for our instructional delivery model focuses on ensuring student learning and competency development, while also considering student and staff health and safety and social emotional well-being. As the district, we entered into our planning a flexible approach, understanding that we may start the school year with one instructional delivery model, and as new information becomes available about health and safety, students or staff may transition to a different model. As a reminder, all 3 options, A, full-time in-person learning, B, flexible distance learning, and C, full-time digital learning, provide students kindergarten through 8th grade receiving instruction from either their teacher in the areas of English language arts, math, science, and history social sciences. Within the school day and at home, students will have instruction and are learning for approximately 7 hours a day, and teachers will instruct in person and virtually. The platform that will be utilized for instruction at school and at home will be Google Classroom and its features like Google Meet to allow for online virtual conferencing. In addition, depending on the model, students would receive instruction through social emotional learning activities and special area classes, within their classroom or virtually. Students in models A and B would eat breakfast for approximately 15 to 20 minutes and lunch for 30 to 35 minutes within the classroom. We have recently received an update that the federal government has provided approval for our district to be able to provide meals to students when they are not at school, and we will be working on the details of making that possible for our students in models B and C when learning from home. To allow for consistency in learning and a seamless process between home and school, teachers will provide Monday through Friday virtual support, virtual office hours, and virtual small group intervention and extension activities to provide students with an opportunity to deepen their understanding of concepts and skills, ask questions, and engage in small group activities with their peers. We will be able to have students remain with the same groupings and the same staff throughout the day. We will design schedules for middle school students to allow the same groupings of students and the teacher to move from subject to subject as much as possible. There will also be opportunities for parents to engage with their students in the virtual setting and provide their parental support to learning. The district will provide training and support for parents to learn about the Google Classroom platform. If the county closes for 10 days because of another outbreak, the full-time in-person 5-day schedule would shift to 5 days of remote learning, along with the flexible distance learning model to shift to 5 days of remote learning. No instructional time will be lost, as the planning and preparation allows for teachers to use the Google Classroom and Google Meets platform seamlessly. All 3 models would allow for accommodations and modifications to be made for students with IEPs and 504 plans. If a parent requests an enrollment in a specific program, an IEP team will come together to review this request and determine if the student's needs can be met in that environment and make recommendations if not. Our Exceptional Student Services Department will be working with teams to ensure the needs of students are met, and there's collaboration with our families. With the changes to the instructional delivery models for school opening in any one of our 3 options, all IEPs will be reviewed to ensure a free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment. All 3 models allow for our school district to meet the requirements for our English language learners, and all 3 models would be able to adhere to the assessment plan decided by the state for 2021, along with our Littleton School District's assessment plan. Planning and preparation for teachers would continue to utilize our district adopted resources and curriculum, along with our pacing guides for all subject areas. This would allow for consistency between home and school and all 3 models. All 3 models meet the required legislation for full-time student status through the use of instructional minutes, combining at-home and in-school instruction. The new approach is a school-based priority model containing the 3 instructional delivery models just described, with all 3 models at each school. The school-based priority 3 model program places students in a model based on our community survey results. This exercise in student placement will allow us to start the school year under the executive orders of the governor in the distance learning model, and then transition students into the model of their choice. Models could change depending upon the contagious disease and preferences of the family and staff. All 3 models are being built to be responsive to the environment and our school community. Based upon the survey results, principals, with support from their staff, will begin to complete classroom and model rosters. As principals create rosters, they will take into consideration the teacher model preference, with flexibility based upon teacher credentials, family preference data, transportation, and student specialized programming needs. Transportation's analysis on routes and drivers is preliminary based upon preference and capacity until principals can build rosters. If transportation is acting according to family preference, then families might have to change their preferred method based upon driver and bus capacity. Based upon the survey results, transportation concern for the community is lower than we had expected. The district school-based priority model will allow principals and their team to fill in teacher staffing and parent requests first, and then for those families with no response to fill in rosters and classroom configurations where there are openings. Once that process is completed, communication will be sent to our families regarding the placement within the model, the school, the teacher assignment, and instructional delivery model. Communication will include back to school and opening of school information. If you could scroll to the slide that has the graph, please. I think it's down another one.
I am so sorry. You're looking for the instructional model and teacher staffing graph, correct?
Other way.
Keep going.
Go. Nope. Other way.
No, the other direction. Right here, please. That's perfect. Thank you. In reviewing the graph on this slide, this is an example of what an assignment of teachers and models would look like at one of our schools within one grade level. You can see one grade level with 4 teachers and this grade level offering all 3 models. Teachers 1 and 2 would each have a class full-time in-person learning with approximately 25 to 26 students Monday through Friday. This would be model A. Teacher 3 would have a class of approximately 32 students, with 16 students coming 2 days a week and the other 16 students coming another 2 days a week, supporting all students when at home through Google Classroom and Google Meets. This represents model B. Teacher 4 would have approximately 35 students Monday through Friday in a full-time virtual learning setting. The transfer to a different homeroom process request will be facilitated as it has been in the past. A family would make a request to the building principal, and those requests are handled based upon the best interest of the child and staffing capacity. If you could scroll one more slide. The Littleton School District school-based dynamic distance learning model ensures safe and social distancing learning and working environments for students and staff, maximizes family choice in student learning format, flexible to the community and staff needs, and ensures all students receive quality instruction that meets state and federal standards. Models A, B, and C within all 7 of our schools are set up as a viable and effective instructional delivery option, so it does not matter whether students are at home or at school. We will begin to work with principals to assign teachers to these models and roster students into classrooms. Once the executive order gets lifted, we will be able to transition students to the school model choice request and adjust to the health and safety needs of the students and staff at that transitional return time. Due to the executive order, we will begin the school year on July 29th using only one model, distance learning, and all 3 models would become available at all 7 sites, depending upon the health and safety of our community at that time. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about this presentation.
Mr. President, may I add a detail?
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President, Governing Board. We are a little out of sync here tonight, as you can tell. I have been so proud of our performance on the Zoom meetings, and we've been so in sync, but there were 2 details that I wanted you to have, 2 stats. We were asked to ask about the mask question, and I wanted you to know that from the community, 71% of the community felt that masks should be mandatory. It's 71%. And when staff was asked the same question, 62% felt that masks should be mandatory. And then you heard Ms. Vandewater talk about the transportation question. This was interesting. We thought this might be a bigger problem. Now remember, we're talking about those who responded. Out of them, 46% said they didn't need transportation. 11% said that they would change schools if they needed to because they had to have transportation. And 43% said that they wanted to stay at their school and they would find a way to get transportation. Any questions on those? I apologize for not having that slide, but I know that was something you specifically asked for. So I wanted to make sure you had those details.
Thank you.
All right, any questions? Let me just start down to John. Is there any questions you'd like to address, ask at this particular time?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, staff, for all the work that you've put in over the last week, and engaging with our parents and creating this options for us. I guess the first question I would have is, as far as the start date on July 29th, those students that know they want to be in the AOI or the pure online option, why wouldn't they just be enrolled from the beginning in our online or option C? It sounds to me like you were thinking everybody would be enrolled in distance learning and then potentially we'd be transferring students to option C on August 17th. Did I understand that correctly?
President Nielsen, Member Reader, yes, that recommendation was based upon Governor Ducey's decision yesterday in his executive order to extend the start date for school, but with the option for school districts to conduct distance learning. So for us to start at the same time we would normally start, the recommendation would be that all of our students begin the school year in distance learning. And once those orders are lifted and it's safe for our students and staff to return to the school, then they would return to their school of choice and the model of their choice. So if a family selected option C through the survey results, they would continue with full online learning. If a family selected option B, then they would transition to school in the hybrid approach.
No, okay, thank you very much for that. I thought, and again, excuse me if I'm wrong, that there was an allowance for the students to go directly into the AOI or option C on the 29th. So I appreciate the clarification.
I do believe that that is an agenda item that you're going to be talking about next.
Okay, so maybe we can continue that discussion. I guess, again, thank you so much for putting this together. I guess I would only have a couple of comments. Number one, I do worry a little bit about option B and the teachers having 32 students, because it would be my expectation that they were providing both in-person instruction as part of Model B, as well as instruction to those students that are learning from home on the same day. So I do worry about that being a lot of stress on teachers to be engaging with 32 students a day. And two, again, just a comment, I recognize that a lot of parents are looking for option A and supportive of that. But given some of the spread that we've seen and some of the orders that have been put in place, I do worry about maintaining social distancing with 26 or 27 students in a classroom and bringing additional students on campus. I know it's a difficult situation for all involved, but I'm still leaning personally, if possible, to an all option B until we start seeing some of our numbers again begin to decline. Frankly, it just seems unrealistic to expect in 2 weeks, given where we're at now, that we're going to be having full classrooms worth of students again. I mean, people can't even go to the gym. So again, those are just my feelings. Again, so much appreciation for the staff for putting this together on such short notice.
Thank you, John. Perlette, have you got something, questions you have?
Mine is a more generic question about the ability to toggle in between if a family finds that something is not working that they initially tried by way of one of the methods. How difficult or easy would it be to make adjustments?
President Nielsen, Member Ramos, for clarification to your question, are you asking how difficult it would be to move from like Model B to Model A, or are you referencing the instructional component?
Both.
Okay, thank you for your question. the way that our educational services department and teachers will be building their instruction are generated from our district pacing guides and our state standards with our adopted resources. So very seamless process, consistency between instruction being delivered in Model A, Model B, Model C. So no instructional time lost or content lost if you move from one model to the next. It would really, though, be dependent upon if we had availability, like spacing wise, capacity for a student to move from, one model to the next, and is there room within another teacher's classroom or within one of the other models.
So as a follow-up to that, I completely understand if you wouldn't be able to provide a definitive answer because we don't know. But it sounds like it would be created based upon capacity, so that if a space is full, there wouldn't be a great opportunity to toggle in between if a family found that one method isn't really working for that student or for that family. It would depend upon availability basis. So there's no wiggle room per se. Is that correct? Or
Mr. President?
Please, go ahead.
Mr. President, can I help out here? So every year we put together student rosters, and so there's a teacher assigned and there's a bunch of kids in the class. And predictably, every year there's parents who want to make changes based on history or some other combination of things. And so staff have normally done a bunch of work to balance out the classes, but we'll have people who don't show up the first week or two. We'll have a series of requests where a person who's in C wants B and a person who's in B wants C. So what the principals are instructed to do is take all of those requests. Dr. Ramos's parent who's maybe been in one model for a week or two and thinks that maybe another model would be better, simply asks the office if they can make a change, and if there's capacity and there's no other issues, they can do that. And we're not filling B model rooms up to 32. 32 was what we thought the most they would hold, because social distancing in a regular classroom maxes out at 16 kids. So there could be 14 in each model or something like that, but we wouldn't go over 16 plus 16 because then we wouldn't have social distancing in the model. So really, changes in homeroom teacher assignment are done on a case-by-case basis, and they would be next year just like they were last year. Different parents have different reasons for why they want to make changes. And so where there's the ability to do that, we usually try to accommodate them early in the year. I guess the difference is this year, everybody's doing distance learning because of the executive order. And so there's not a change that can happen that way until it's safe to move.
I appreciate the response, Dr. Freeman. I do have a follow-up, not necessarily based on the models, but more on what the plan might be for those students who may have lost some learning in all of the transitions and just the current state of things. Can you speak a bit to what the intention is to level set with those students coming back in July?
President Nielsen, Member Ramos, thank you for your question. Yes, our educational services department will be guiding our teachers. Teachers are masterful at planning for their instruction. We've built some gap pacing guides, between the end of the year and the beginning of the year. So when we start the school year, there'll be some remediation of skills, review of the previous year's learning, to get the students up and going. And so we've done an analysis of the standards by grade level and any potential gap in learning between second to third grade, let's say, with some direction and guidance for our teachers to begin instruction there. There'll also be, like there is every year, some initial assessment so that teachers can gauge, where each child is when they come to their classroom, so they can adjust their instruction accordingly. But we've built into our pacing guide some potential gap standards that a teacher will want to pay attention to before new learning occur.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rama. Kathy, you have any questions you'd like?
So I have a few. If July 29th is the goal for distance learning, which I understand, that we have to launch eventually, how are we going to get people that may not have laptops or may not have internet? I know we've talked about it, but what's the strategy to reach? How will you know how many people have a laptop or need a laptop? And are you going to send out, my big question from parents this week has been, what specifications do I need in a laptop? I have no idea. So when are you going to send that information, and how are you going to ensure certain communities may not have laptops for their children that during this time will only be able to do online learning? So if you could answer that first, I would appreciate it.
Ms. Chizzy, do you want to respond to the technology question?
Sure, we have been talking about that all along, Mr. President, Member Reyes. We're thinking that we would start strategically by placing one laptop with each family and seeing how far we can go. Survey, we know we can cover that. We know we can. Our survey results indicate, not just this year, but in the monitoring report for the last several years, that better than 80% of our families do have laptops and an internet connection, or computers and an internet connection in the home. So it will take us time to figure that out. We're looking at multiple days of community outreach where they're able to come in, and we will be able to distribute. Of course, we have to do this safely and slowly using social distancing. And we had a name for it, Dr. Freeman, if you want to jump in here for those first few days that you will hear about in the next agenda item.
Yeah, because we realize that undertaking is going to be challenging. Our proposal is for the first 3 days in July, the 29th, 30th, and 31st, is we would categorize as parent engagement days. And the same, we're thinking the same thing would happen like what typically we would call fall conferences. If we were distance learning during fall conferences, we would have virtual parent engagement for fall conferences too. Most everybody knows that fall conferences were early release days, Wednesdays were early release days. So the thinking on this is we start the first 3 days of the year like early release days, gives teachers some additional time to get prepared, and that we take a third of the students each day and have them have an opportunity to come by, get what they need to start the school year. And Member Reyes, President Nielsen, we probably would be doing grab and go meals as well. So the community is going to be coming down and kind of touching base at the school in that first week for exchange of food and supplies and other things. And what we would do would be to set it up before to keep a minimum number of people and a limited contingent of staff on each of those days to handle that handoff. And so, I mean, we just found out we were doing everybody distance learning yesterday. I think we're in a pretty good position as far as having a laptop for every family and maybe being able to do more than that. And so, you know, we want to start the work of getting kids rostered in teachers' rooms, so then we can delegate to the teachers some of that connecting with families and then set up that schedule so that that is a little daunting to try to get. I mean, I think the last time we counted, it was almost 3,800 families with 5,700 kids or something like that that we had in the system. So that means we'd be doing 1,300 computers a day over 7 schools. So that's a couple hundred a day at each school over, you know, the course of first bell to last bell. And I don't know that we would want to try it faster, and I don't think it'd be really any better to do it slower. Anyway, that's our jumping off plan for right now, Ms. Reyes. That's as far as we got this morning while we were putting this together.
That works. At least I know it's a priority somewhere and we got to do it type thing. Next, I wanted to talk my understanding, and I'm not real versed in this, so as educators, you'll have to help me, but I understand there is a new ELD law out there. And we haven't talked about the English, I'm going to call it English language learners because that's how I know it. But my understanding is they're no longer assigned to one classroom, and that they're placed in general education, and that they have to have 2 mandatory 15-minute recess times. And that I'm not real versed. I'm more versed in it because I've had 2 parents with, I guess, children that are English language learners, and they wanted to know how we are going to address this if we're saying there's no movement in the hallways, you know, perhaps no recess. So I just want to make sure we're looking at the English, the new ELD law, if in fact that's even out there, and that we're figuring out how to work with those children if now they're going to be placed in general education. And we're working and figuring that out. I would assume our population is somewhat significant in that, and I just don't want to not know that if we should know that. So it's more bringing it up and asking, and you can get back to me if you don't know, or if you do know, you can correct me that that's not an issue.
We'd be happy to get back with you with the specifics on ELD requirements. We have guidance from the Arizona Department of Education for our English language learners, and it varies based upon their grade level and their level of proficiency. And we will be able to accommodate our English language learners within each one of our 3 models to ensure they receive the amount of minutes that they are required for their language development. I am not aware of the 15-minute recess rule for English language learners. I have not heard that, so we'd be happy to research that and get back to you with a more detailed response.
That's fine. It's 2 15-minute recesses is my understanding. So yeah, I just want to make sure those students are not left behind, and we're not addressing them if we need to do figuring that all out in the middle of figuring out a lot of different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ms. Reyes, we just got the test scores for those kids like 2 days ago.
No,
So
yeah.
we're brand new rosters.
Understand. I just, again, want to mention them because there's so much going on now. We just definitely don't want to, we want to try and grab all the population the best we can. Absolutely. The other thing, just for me, for clarity, when we talk about online, and forgive my lack of really, you're talking about I'm online, and is this a recorded, you've recorded my curriculum and I'm jumping on at 9 o'clock if I get up to go to the bathroom, and I'm watching this recording and I'm going in and doing my assignments. Is that what we're talking about, online learning?
Member Reyes, some of it could be a recording, but what it would look like is similar to what we're doing right now. You know, a student would be able to receive direct instruction in a platform called Google Classroom and Google Meets, where there's this virtual conferencing. So the teacher could deliver direct instruction to students in this manner, similar to this manner, small group instruction in this manner. And there's also what we call tiles within Google Classroom. So a student might have 4 tiles. They might have a tile for English language arts, 1 for math, 1 for science, and 1 for social studies. And they would be able to go into each one of those tiles and maybe see a video recording of their teacher explaining a skill or a concept. And then they would be able to independently practice that skill. They would also have independent reading, comprehension time, They would be able to take assessment in that platform, and they would also be able to get into smaller groups with peers and a teacher, and even a reading interventionist or a support staff person. So it's when we say online learning or digital learning, it's not just a child logging into the computer and working for hours independently, you know, like maybe on a worksheet, you know. It's a combination of things where there'll be direct instruction from the teacher, there will be independent practice for the child, there would be a student hearing a video recording to reinforce a skill or to teach a concept. And then there would be opportunity for kids to interact with their peers. Very similar to the classroom, just in a digital setting.
Miss Vandewater,
Yes.
you introduced a couple of terms and we went through them pretty quick, but I think one thing that would help Member Reyes, maybe if you would explain the difference between synchronous and asynchronous.
Oh yeah, I
delivery.
had no idea what that was. I'm like, what?
So students would be able to have asynchronous and synchronous learning time. So depending upon the grade level and the content, they would have, you know, maybe 50 minutes of time where they would be interacting with their teachers, similar to the classroom setting, where we're giving direct instruction on math, you know, on fractions, dividing fractions. And the student would be able to see the teacher interacting with that skill and learning very similar to classroom time.
So that's an example of which one?
Asynchronous.
Asynchronous is when the teacher's interacting with the kids and they're talking to each other.
Okay.
And synchronous is an opportunity for the students to engage independently with the content and the materials through the tiles that I described in Google Classroom. So we might be loading up a story through, you know, from their adopted resource, and the child go through the story. There's even opportunity for students to manipulate information on the screen. For example, if they're learning letter names and letter sounds, they might see those on the left side of the screen. They might hear their teacher, I say it, now you say it, and then they drag it into different buckets. So it's a very interactive approach depending upon the grade level and the age of the child.
Okay. No, that's helpful. Thank you. And I just have one last question. And when you describe it, I have a friend of mine who has a child in a charter private school, and they do all online learning, and it's very different than what you just described. I've seen him do it, so that's why I was trying to understand the mode of how we're doing it. But the other thing I just wanted to make sure, and that goes back to and maybe I misunderstood it too. My understanding is the 16. So if I chose flex schedule, that's what I'm calling it. In my classroom, when I have my my bottom in the chair at school, I'm anticipating up to 16 students to be in my classroom, and the other 16 are somewhere learning on a different day schedule. Is that how that, not 32 kids all in a room, right?
That's correct. And I believe Member Reyes are referencing Model B, which is the hybrid model, flexible distance learning. So you would have, you know, 32, potentially 30 or 32 students on a roster, and 15 or 16 of them would come Monday and Tuesday, and 15 or 16 of them would come Thursday or Friday. And so they'd interact, you know, with their teacher and their peers like a typical day in the classroom, using social distancing, even using the technology within the classroom to allow for social distancing to take place. If you can't bring them to, you know, a horseshoe table to be too close together, they can even do small group within the classroom setting using their device. And then when the students are not at school, they're doing what I described in your prior question, where they're getting onto their Google Classroom and, you know, doing some independent learning. They might have virtual office hours with their teacher, or a reading interventionist might even log on with them through Google Meets and provide them with small group intervention or extension activity time.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. That's all I have.
Oops, my microphone was off. Amy, have you got anything that you'd like to, any questions that you have?
I do, thank you. So I guess one of my first questions is, okay, so with the option B, the hybrid learning, I'm sure that you guys have already looked into this, but are you planning to have, if I have more than one child in the district and let's say my child goes Monday, Tuesday, is there a way that we can make sure all of my children go Monday to Tuesday so that I'm not having multiple kids, or are we not taking to that consideration? Or maybe there's families out there that would want one kid Monday, Tuesday, one kid Thursday, Friday. I don't know, but that was something that came to my mind.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
President Nielsen, Member Solshnek, absolutely, we would be working with principals and staff as they build rosters to take all of those factors into consideration. If you have 2 or 3 children and you want them all on hybrid B, to come at the same time, to keep them within the same group and make it easier for your family. We're trying to meet the needs of each one of our families to provide that stability and consistency for them. So that's the task of principals, is to start looking at their school community and their staffing models and ratios, and then place students into those rooms based upon the model that the family has selected.
Ms. Sosnick, when we were looking at that before, we were trying to line people up by family and address if transportation was needed. So it might be a challenge for us if parents wanted to split their kids on opposite days. I don't know if we would do that. If we're gonna send a bus over there, we're gonna need to have that be efficient. So principals were instructed to try to keep families together on that model.
Okay. And so my other kind of comment is, I'm excited to hear that the district's going to have for any type of online learning, they're going to have synchronous and asynchronous learning. I just would want to make sure that we're very aware of the fact that if we have one device in the family and 2 kids are supposed to be on at the same time, that could make it difficult, or we don't know what those students' homes lives like. If there's someone screaming or yelling in the background, that might make it hard if I'm supposed to be paying attention to my teacher online. So I'm glad to see that there's going to be both models in it. I am very concerned about those teachers that are going, hopefully they all picked, but if they're placed with option B, having to manage 16 in their seats and 16 on their computer and getting feedback to all of them. That's very difficult to do. And I know our teachers are amazing and they will try to do it all and be the super women and men that they are. But I want us to try to be aware of that. And if there's a way to kind of lessen that load so they don't have as much feedback to be given on the days that the kids are doing online, I would be excited to see or hear that, just for the equity of teachers and not trying to build resentment between teachers that are doing option A or option C, because those option B teachers, I think, may be doing the most work. And that's all I can think of right now. But thank you, everyone, for all the hard work you guys have done.
Thank you. I just have one or two quick questions here on your prioritizing. That's you said the principal. Is there going to be any prioritizing or preference given to those who have answered a survey as compared to those who didn't answer a survey? We know what some of the parents, we know what 47% of the parents, of whatever that number is, know what they'd like for their kids, what the teachers would like, but then you've got the other 50, 52, 53%. If they, get assigned and decide, okay, we don't want our kids, and you got a full classroom, 26 kids that are in, you've assigned to B and they really want A, or they're in A and you don't want them there, can you move a whole classroom from B to A? Is that flexible enough to do something like that? I guess priority and being able to move between those two. If the other parents that don't have that, or maybe there's going to be enough time for them to voice their opinion between now and the 29th.
We have kind of a week by week schedule for getting we call accordioning out information to and from parents, and it was drafted out on a week by week basis. And I know Ms. Vanderwater was working with the principals on that. So we do have a plan to place the respondents and then fill in with the non-respondents, communicate that to the parents, and have them get back to us if there's an issue. Maybe Kristen can rough out what that schedule for placement and parent feedback is going to look like on the schedule for opening as we have it right now.
Okay. I think the other one I had was suppose January, which is what, third quarter, second semester. Is there capabilities if everybody decides, I mean, if the governor and everything says schools are open, then we can go back to A model if everybody wants to go back there, but maybe there's some that still want to stay again in B. Is there that flexibility that we move more to the A and now we only have one class of B or whatever it might be? Is that again available?
President Nielsen, I think yes, that's what we're saying, is that we want to have all three models to have the flexibility based upon the contagious disease and the needs and desire of our community.
The last one on computers, I guess, just on computers, if we hand those out, is there still sufficient computers for those to use in class if there's, work to be done in class on computers? I know some of the younger grades still have computers, or with the Model A or with the Model B. Again, I just look at availability. If you're putting out computers to, have the student body families, is there still sufficient to be in class if they need to be used in class?
President Nielsen, yes, we are doing an analysis of the laptops we have. We know that we have we have a count good enough for all of our 3rd through 8th graders, plus some additional ones. And we currently have some on order with the rest of the world. We have some large orders that have been placed. So we're totally analyzing that, counting them, and trying to figure that out.
And I guess just the last one is kind of a pie in the sky type look at it. Would we have the ability to look at the learning capabilities of the students in the A, the B, and the C model and see which one seems to be more productive or which one seems to be more effective? Maybe we need to change the way school really looks from what we're learning from this whole thing. And would A, B, and C, if we have the capabilities of, looking at those over the 6 months or whatever time period, to say, okay, these kids in B really accelerated, or these in the classroom accelerated, or the homes really didn't do well. I mean, is there a way to look at that?
President Nielsen, I will tell you that we will be collecting throughout this process feedback from our students and our families and our teachers to monitor all three models and the productivity, instructionally within the models. We also will be administering our district's assessment plan according to plans. And our teachers do an exceptional job of designing common formative assessments, which are very short cycle, 3 to 5 question assessments based upon skills that they're teaching. So we'll have a lot of data to not only assess continuous improvement and student achievement, but also get feedback from all of our stakeholder groups about these three models so that we can adjust in a fluid manner throughout and celebrate the things that we're doing well as we're all learning this new way of doing things together.
Thank you very much. All right, do you need to present? That was part A at 7A. Or you also then present?
Mr. Nielsen?
Yeah.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up question? I don't want to belabor the point too far, but can I?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we were discussing this, I was just thinking for a moment about the impacts potentially of teacher absenteeism, in particular, if we may anticipate it to be slightly higher this year. If, for example, teachers that are teaching the online course are not available, or a teacher who's in the hybrid B model is unavailable for an extended period of time, would the expectation be that a substitute would be able to cover one of those two alternative models?
Member or President Nielsen, I have a little bit of information on that. I'm not scheduled to speak tonight, but I do have some information on substitutes.
Thank you,
Please go
Dr.
ahead.
Member Rader, I've actually spoken to ESI earlier in the week, and they're helping us gather some information on the subs that they cover for us. They're getting information on whether they would be interested in subbing online, not subbing online, subbing at all. So we have an idea of how many subs are available to us. And then we would need to look into training substitutes to take long and short-term assignments, either online or in person when we're able to go back. And so those plans are in the works, but we have thought about it, and we have started speaking to our provider.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all. So, Ms. Van Werner, do you now need to work on item number B, 7B?
Administration, President Nielsen, administration is recommending that the governing board approve the school-based dynamic distance learning model, which includes remote learning 5 days distance, 3 days distance, or 0 days distance, depending upon the health and safety needs of the staff and students.
Are there any questions that you would like to direct to her at this particular time? If not, we do need to have an action on that particular aspect of reopening instructional delivery plan.
This is Kathy. I'll move the governing board approve the 2021 school-based dynamic distance learning plan with models for 5 days per week, 3 days per week, and no days per week of distance learning, depending on the health and safety needs of staff and students.
Thank you, Kathy. Do I have a second?
Perletta seconds.
Thank you, Perlette. Ada, would you
Nielsen?
make a roll call there, please?
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sosnick.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Dr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just reaching up to move my e-boards and then realized it's not my e-boards. So I have tonight an item on possibly changing the start date of school. And that was a reaction to the executive order that we found out about in the governor's press conference yesterday. And so we've examined a number of variables and implications. And so there are, through the education community, still a lot of questions, even after the executive order. And in some cases, what we'll reference is Executive Order 2020-41 and 44. 41 is the one that came out earlier that granted us some flexibility and some assurances about grant funds to backfill budget gaps. And 44 was the one yesterday about the start of school being delayed. And so there are specifics and bullet points, and quite often what we find is we have in our field very particular language that has particular meaning, and sometimes synonyms or other words are chosen that create some questions for people in the field. So clarification is ongoing today and in the future about some of the details of the executive order. But what that order said essentially was that school was going to be delayed until August 17th unless the district continued with distance learning on their regularly planned start date. So as we looked at that language and not knowing what flexibility there might be in rule or anything else, it appeared to us that if we changed our start date, we would lose the opportunity to begin the year with distance learning. So one of the things that we looked at was, for instance, at the end of the year, when staff were working to develop some models, is the things that we learned in the fourth quarter that we liked and didn't like about the opportunities that we put together. So really, over the summer, we were all thinking about how we might improve distance learning, and then we conceived the idea of the two models, which was to be at school and be home, and then the hybrid one in the middle. And our ed services people started working on clarifying what those days would look like for those teachers and those kids. And because right now the thinking is the novel coronavirus or some variant of that, or even a new virus, is going to be part of our future environment going forward, that we need to have the flexibility built in for kids to be able to go to school or continue learning at home, where they might be safer than they are at school. So our model designs anticipated the need to be able to change that delivery as health and safety environment changed. And what we still do not have for the board tonight is what all the criteria might be that would cause us to open up options or close down options. And we hope to be able to talk to you about that a little more at the July 14th meeting. We're always thinking that more guidance and more information is going to come out. In this case, the governor's executive order is what has decided that kids need to stay home. So it wasn't a decision by the county health department, the state health department, or the school district. It was a decision by the governor for everybody to be on distance learning. So obviously that's one of the criteria, is it's ordered by the state. The reason that we have developed that core digital system and the components of the curriculum to be able to be constant through the 3 different delivery models is just because of that, because we expect the environment to be changing. And so we are placing kids right now in classrooms where, should conditions be appropriate, they could retreat to a more included model and be at school more. I think just about everybody I know, other than maybe a few rare cases, appreciates the importance of kids being able to go to school, socialize, and interact constantly with adults and those kind of things. So I think that's still the long-term goal for everybody. But the model we have in place for distance learning, Model C, is perfectly suited to doing this. Then what we had was, as Ms. Reyes pointed out, all of the logistical challenges of, we had thought that we would be opening with 3 models and that we might have to close down to Model C at some point in the year. It turns out that we're closing down to Model C to start the year. And so that presents some logistical challenges in getting the year started remotely. You can't really get the year started remotely without getting people together to give them the remote starting stuff. So that's something that we've been working on. And then the question was, can we really be ready to do that? Can the staff and teachers be ready? What we've done is try to layer this out and figure out the things that we believe we can do in the time allotted, and then continue to work on that. So in a lot of cases, teachers that haven't been distance learning teachers before, if they're brand new, or if the experience they had was fourth quarter last year, they're going to grow and need to refine their practice. The pre-service professional development that we contemplated for this year included all three models. And so the idea that we're going to shift to delivering all of the instruction in Model C has caused us to go back and re-examine the pre-serve professional development schedule. We would propose, in order to be able to do that, is to bring our continuing teachers back a day earlier, and we would propose paying them the board-approved stipend addenda for daily rate, and that would be, I think, 165 teachers, an additional cost to the district of about $40,000 to add to their contract year. And that would allow us to do much more with them by way of preparing for full distance learning for the start of the year. The additional professional development of teachers would be ongoing as they grew, and part of the day that Ms. Vandewater described for you includes some time for professional learning communities and for professional development. So it's actually built into the daily schedule she reviewed with you. We built it into the first 3 days of school. And in some cases where there's additional professional development time on Wednesdays, they would still be able to continue to work to improve their knowledge of distance learning and their craft to compare the things that have been successful and challenging with their colleagues. So our recommendation is going to be to keep our regularly planned start date, modify our pre-service schedule a little bit, do a 3-day ramp up for the first 3 days of school to get distance learning up and going, use our classified staff to help support those 3 days. So one of the big questions we're going to need to bring back to the board on the 14th, depending on how long we're in distance learning, is we have a number of hourly support staff who we're expecting to have employment with the school district for the start of the year, is how they might be used to earn their wages when the whole school district is in distance learning mode, or if they would need to be furloughed or anything like that in that regard. We're not ready to make a proposal to the board about changes to support staff at this time. We've been mostly working on getting teachers and kids into classrooms. And we think they will be very valuable to us as the year gets going. We'll need many hands on deck, and we'll need to divide labor and be sure that we have a lot of space between people. The kind of personal protection and distance at the same time we're trying to ramp up the year is a unique challenge. So we think having extra hands from our support staff will help, and then we'll move on to the weeks after that. The meeting on July 14th is still before the start of the school year for a lot of our support staff. Teachers, I think actually new teachers report that day. So we have some time between this meeting and that meeting to continue working on how staff would be allocated. Some of the concerns that the administration had is one, that this appears to be an approach by the superintendent of public instruction and the governor. In fact, Superintendent Hoffman was on the radio this morning, and that this appears to be a month-by-month delay So nobody's come out and boldly said we're going to start school after fall break and it'll take us that long to get ready. Is that they're assessing the community spread trend lines, hospitalization, and those kind of numbers, and they're going to continue to do that every month. So one of our concerns was right now, August 17th is the day that school can't resume by, but we could find out in a couple weeks that the governor extends that again, and then again, and then again. So there's no guarantee we are returning on the 17th, that we would only lose 13 days. It could be multiple weeks before we get a chance to bring everybody back to school. We don't want to risk losing that many weeks of learning while we're waiting for this month by month direction to come back to school. The other thing that we're concerned about, I think Mr. Rader brought this up a couple meetings ago, is the community spread of coronavirus is growing, but also if you saw the governor's last press conference, they're starting now to graph influenza cases alongside of it. And there's a chance that the illness in the community could become even worse. And I think to Mr. Rader's point again about substitutes, if the infection and hospitalization, those kind of things begin to affect our staff, it could be really challenging for schools to be able to deliver programs. So right now, why people are healthy and it's a good time to train them is and get school going is that we could be facing even more challenges in the future because of this virus if we're not able to flatten the curve in Arizona in a few weeks. We think that the on-the-job professional development embedded into the the day-to-day working life and professional learning communities is probably going to be have a greater impact than extending the pre-service training time, and we have a very limited budget capacity for additional days. So anytime that we want to do more professional development, we expect to be able to pay our teachers. And since there's been no forgiveness of the 180-day calendar, we can't just swap out days with kids for days with teachers. We would need to add to those days at teachers' daily rate. And right now we think that, doing that very much is going to be outside the capacity of our budget without making other changes. We're not ready to propose that yet. We think that we can get a lot of work done preparation-wise with teachers on the family engagement days. And so those would be actually appearing on the instructional calendar as early release days. They're already on the instructional calendar in most places. And so we're concerned that if we did delay and we had to have 180 days, the way districts would need to deal with that would be to eliminate breaks. And I think right now breaks are important for the well-being of people once school year gets going. This kind of change and effort is going to be fairly intense. So holidays, days off, and breaks I think are important. Or you would have to extend the instructional calendar I don't know how far into June to make up those days. So we think it's probably prudent to get our 180-day school calendar underway. That actually would give us some more flexibility down the road if there was any other reason that we had to close schools because we couldn't provide any of the model service in any of the models due to lack of staff. The other thing we thought about is people have known about the calendar that we have. We've synchronized it with the Tolleson community. It's been advertised for a couple years. And so along that line of keeping your school, being able to keep your teacher if you can, being able to keep your start date if you can, is some sense of normalcy and recognizing that people really have already been isolated for 4 months. By the time school starts, let's see, March, April, May, June, July, probably 5 months by the time school starts. And so having a change in routine, start of school, those kind of things, we think will be some sort of comfort to families and people. We also thought about a lot about staff, and so staff that leave for the summer and come back to work usually have to do something where they save up some money over the course of the year to pay their summer bills. And if they've planned that out very closely, about the time school starts, they're running out of money. And if we delay the start of school, we delay the first pay for the 2021 school year. And we thought especially of those employees that we've recruited and those coming from out of state, depending on the length of that delay, might also miss a month of benefits as well as the compensation that they were anticipating having starting at the end of July. Those are all factors we weighed in thinking that the most prudent course of action is to keep our calendar, to do some modifications for pre-service. The other thing that we thought is in the parent engagement days is really try to do a lot of work with our families to help families prepare to support kids in distance learning. So that first 3 days is going to be as much about moms and dads distance learning as it is about kids, and putting together some resources for them to help them make sure that their kids are successful in a distance learning model, because it'll be probably a challenge for a lot of families. And then we can assess if we need more computers, what families might need those, what other things we might add, in addition to providing meals and all of the things that we were doing fourth quarter. We can get that meal service started when school starts, instead of kids not having the opportunity to have meals for another week or two as well. So I'd be happy to answer questions about the thinking that went into that or the plans that we have. If I can't, maybe one of the other members of the cabinet can chime in and do the best that we can. The only motion that we have prepared for the board tonight was to approve the stipend addenda for returning teachers for an additional day of work.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. Appreciate that information. Are there any of you that have any questions of Dr. Freeman at this present time? If there's not, could we have a motion to go ahead and move this motion as a recommendation for this extended 1 day of professional development? Am I on mute?
This is Mr. Rader. I don't know if it's written down, if you want to scroll down so I can see the motion, but I can move to approve, or I move the board approve one additional day of teacher pay.
Professional development. I can read it here for you, John. Approved an additional day of professional development for continuing teachers as the adopted an additional daily.
If we could just scroll to the motion, I could make it. Thank you. I'll move the governing board approve an additional day of professional development for continuing teachers at the adopted additional daily attendance rate to facilitate opening school on July 29th as planned.
This is Kathy. I'll second that.
Thank you, Kathy. All in favor? Ada, would you go through that? Vote?
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sosnick.
Aye.
Thank you.
I think that's all that there is on the agenda. Is there anything else there, Dr. Freeman, that we need? I appreciate all the work that you and the staff and everybody's been doing, as well as the board members. I appreciate you.
Hey, Dr. Freeman, just one clarity if I can, going back to that ELD I asked you to reference. Actually, it's two separate issues. If you reference Senate Bill 1083, that's the mandatory 2 15-minute recesses that are required for K 2/3. So that's the reference on that one. And then I'll still ask you to reference the ELD one as well. That's all I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, we're working, I mean, the ELD law changed, and actually it's a little more flexible than it had been in the past. And, you know, we do have some concerns about addressing that with virtual distance learning. The recess is for kids who are in kindergarten through 5th grade. And we're aware of that. There's a question we have about movement of kids around campus that actually research recess might end up being large motor group activity in the room or other activities in the room, but a break from instruction. And it's really going to depend on, I think, the health and safety situation. So Ms. Reyes, members of the board, what we've worked on is 5 levels of health concern delivery. We thought we were going to start the year in the middle, and it turns out that we went all the way to level 1, which is everybody's distance learning. So we're working on refining those and being able to share those with you. And we're also working on what the conditions might be for moving up and down in those levels. And you know, how we might go about that. And gathering more information. There is back ordering of materials all over for computers, hotspots and things like that are on back order. In fact, I think some companies just quit taking orders. So when we might be able to get deliveries of things and all of that, there's a lot more work to layer out and things to bring back before the board. And as we're able to get clarification on that and put those proposals together, you'll be seeing them in future meetings. I wish we could do more for everybody tonight, but you know, we're working pretty fast, and we still have 1 meeting before school starts. So we're optimistic that we might be able to cover some more things for all of you then.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you all so very, very much. And I have a recommendation for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Kathy. I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any nays? Thank you again, also very, very much. Appreciate it.
So long.
Be good.
Be safe out there.
Safe.